You action figure enthusiasts out there, JC here, and welcome to a special Tuesday edition of the live stream. I'm going live tonight because I didn't do a live stream last week, mainly just because I really didn't feel like I had much to talk about. But also, this week on Thursday, I'm actually planning on going up to New York City for New York Comic Con. So I don't think I'll be back in time in order to do a live stream on my normal day of Thursday. So I'm going to take the train up and spend the day there. I'm only going for the day, so I'm only going to be there on Thursday. But I thought I'd go, check things out, see what companies had on hand. I doubt they're going to have a whole lot new from what we saw at Toy Fair, just 2 weeks ago, and then, San Diego Comic Con and PowerCon a few weeks before that. But I figured, what the hell. So I am going up to New York Comic Con. I think it was the last live stream where I said I wasn't going, but I was thinking about it. And I was like, yeah, let's go up for the day. And even that's not cheap because it's like $600 to take the train up back to and from New York City. So even without like hotel and stuff, it's still not a cheap trip cheap trip. So, but let us see who's in the house here. Mr. All Mine, what's up? Mr. All Mine, hope everything is good. Yeah, I'd say they've been pretty good. My dad's doing a lot better here this past couple of weeks. It was definitely a little rough there for a bit, but he's been doing much better. So definitely good on that front. Jason is in the house. What's up? Clay is in the house. What's up? So I thought I would, I thought as for our main topics tonight, we can talk about what we kind of expecting to see from New York Comic Con, what we're hoping to see, things like that. Blake, what's up? Seeing Blake in the house. Good to see you, Jerry. Mr. Allmine. Yeah, no, I will admit on the train, it's the fast train. Like I could take a train that takes like several hours, whereas like the train I'm taking is like an hour and 15 minutes. So I paid a little extra for the faster ride. But yeah, New York City's not cheap. Those guys that live in New York City, they're kind of lucky or live around that area. But for those of us that actually have to travel to the city and stuff, it's definitely a pain in the butt. Christopher Eubanks, I want WWE figure of WMX7 2-pack for next Christmas. All right, well, we'll let Santa know. What's up, the MM? Lord Venger. And that's round trip. That's both up and back. It's like $300, somewhere in that neighborhood each way. So that's round trip, but still. And I didn't look at flying. I don't know if flying is actually cheaper at this point or what, but I didn't look at flying out there. Usually it's just nicer to take the train and get up and back. Penn Station is just like a quick walk to, it's a quick walk to Javits Center from the train station. So the airport's like far away. So you got to take if you saved anything on airfare, you'd lose it on cab fare. Power Turtle says, got the X-Men wave. The trunks make a world of difference. Which X-Men wave are we talking about there? The X-Men 97 wave, the one that's hitting Target now. I haven't picked any of those up. In fact, I haven't been to the store here in the last few weeks, so I haven't seen them on shelves. But I think Target is the place that's been getting those in stock. I don't even know if Todd has a booth at New York Comic Con this year. He might have some products on display at like the DC booth or something like that, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything indicating Todd's got an actual booth this year at New York Comic Con. I know like NECA will have a booth, though again, how much new over what we just saw 2 weeks ago at Toy Fair? I'm not expecting tons of new stuff. Hasbro will not be there. The Hasbro Marvel Legend brand team will be hanging out at the Marvel booth with their Giant Man build a figure with their Giant Man HasLab figure. So they'll be showing that off, but it's not like Hasbro's going to be there with like lots of new Marvel Legend reveals and stuff. So let's see who else should be there. Super 7's going to be there. They actually have a panel this year where I think they're going to be announcing the full details on that Cobra mothership for the reaction line that they've been teasing for the last several weeks. I'm most interested to see what the price on that's going to be, because if that thing's over $300, man, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'd get it just because I'm not really collecting, the 3 3/4 inch stuff these days, but it's kind of cool looking. And of course, we really haven't gotten a great look at the inside of it, but I hope it's not any more than $300. And I have a feeling it's going to be offered as some type of crowdsourcing item like they did with the Thundercats layer. Select Annihilus picks would be nice. Diamond Select will be there. They will have a booth there. Let's see who else should be there. I'm sure like Tomasi Nations will be there. They usually have a presence at New York Comic Con. Now just off the top of my head, that's all that's coming to mind. Oh, yeah, I'm not sure who else will be there, but I basically just plan on, the doors open at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and I'll get to town around just a little bit before that, and just gonna walk around, look at stuff. Like, I'm not trying to set up interviews with people and all that jazz. I'm just there to see what it is, what's there, and I'll take some nice pictures of anything new that is product wise, post up on the sites. So like, in-hand images of the Giant Man, even though that was also, I think Giant Man was on display. I guess it was the D23 convention is the only live convention Hasbro's had that on display at. And that was right after they launched the campaign. Jen, someone who was lucky enough to attend Toy Fair pre-COVID, it feels more like it's becoming obsolete. Well, yeah, I think so. I would agree. I mean, I didn't personally go this year, so I was not there. But obviously, from everything I saw, and I too have covered Toy Fair pre-COVID, for like 20 years, and Toy Fair's changed a lot since like the first years I covered it. Toy Fair used to take place in multiple places in the city. There was Javits, then there was what was called the Toy Buildings, which was like across town. So I can tell you how much fun it was when you'd have to go from Javits to across town to the Toy Buildings, because everything's set up by appointment. Toy Fair is not like a convention where you just walk around. I mean, a few places will have, booths that you can just kind of walk into, but most places you have to make an actual appointment with. So you have to get like the Toy Fair badge, and then you've got to actually make individual appointments with each of the toy companies. And so, and that means that you've got to be there at whatever time you were able to schedule the appointment for. So if you're seeing one guy at Javits and you've got another appointment that's like an hour later, and you're trying to rush across the city, that's not easy. So I mean, the toy buildings were cool, and you tended to have companies that had more elaborate setups and stuff, but it was definitely, as far as somebody who was covering it, it was a pain in the ass to go back and forth. Though I will say most of the stuff that was action figure oriented at that time, the companies were in the toy buildings. There wasn't nearly as many action figure companies in the Javits Center itself. Javits was usually filled with like the small guys, making the kitty toys or Beanie Babies, or the little just random toys that have lights, like UFOs that had lights in them, and just things like that. Not like major brands that you tend to think of today. Today everything is in Javits except for Hasbro. Hasbro, for whatever reason, has always chosen to be off-site. They used to have their own building. Both Hasbro and Mattel used to have their own building where they would set up. The first year I went to Toy Fair, which was the year that or it was actually the second year I went to Toy Fair, but it was like the year that the Clone Wars movie was coming out, and Hasbro had their own building, and they had this huge like setup. And back then, like they really, I guess the best word I could say is respected the media. I guess because they were mostly catering to mainstream media back then, as opposed to the fan sites. Now they just kind of jam you in, get you in and out, and and it's not really that special. But back then, it was definitely special. They'd have exclusives that they would give you, and they'd have big presentations. I mean, they would. Well, this year Hasbro didn't, but in recent years Hasbro would still do the presentation. But it was just much more special feel in those earlier days. Back, and I'm talking about 2000 early 2000s is when I first started covering Toy Fair. So let's see. So if I was lucky enough to attend Toy Fair COVID, it feels more. Okay, yeah, sorry. So yeah, so it was definitely in those early years. It was definitely very different than even like the years leading up to before the pandemic in 2020. In fact, I remember in 2019 that was or actually early 2020. That was the last Toy Fair I went to. Was the one right literally like weeks before the pandemic. And I remember back then, in fact, it's very lucky like I didn't get COVID because COVID, obviously, even though we weren't really aware of it at the time, it was obviously already in this country at the time of the 2019 Toy Fair. So the fact that like it was riding the train and in a convention center crammed in with a lot of other people and stuff, it's really kind of lucky I didn't get COVID that year. But but I remember people talking about it in regards to how it was causing difficulties with the overseas factories. That the overseas factories were starting to shut down and stuff, but nobody at that point dreamed of what was to come with like everything shutting down and all that jazz. So it was definitely kind of interesting. But I've not personally been back to Toy Fair itself. I mean, this was the first year since COVID, I think, that there was an actual physical Toy Fair. And then just because there were so many companies that did not really seem to attend or have much of a presence at it, it just was not, I just didn't feel like I needed to personally go up there myself. So, and even New York Comic Con, kind of same thing with New York Comic Con. I mean, from a toy company perspective, I'm not speaking as like a convention as a whole, because I mean, if you're somebody's going to one of these conventions for cosplaying or to see a celebrity or something like that, that's a totally different thing. But as far as like toy company presence, even New York Comic Con really is not pulling in the kind of companies that it used to. Because I mean, New York Comic Con used to have like Mattel would attend and Hasbro would have a presence of some sort. Hasbro used to do the thing where like they'd have a special media event before New York, right before New York Comic Con. So like you travel up to New York, you go to the Hasbro thing, which was not open to the public, and then you'd go to the convention. But Hasbro this year just they did some quick tours and they really had nothing new as far as like action figure products this year. So, but yeah, definitely things have changed. This entire hobby has changed a lot since 2020. Companies have developed more of an online presence. They've been using the influencer more, things like that. So yeah, definitely a lot of changes since the pandemic. Stillwin, thank you for the super chat donation. As always, heard anything about Jazzware's Call of Duty line 6-inch and 4-inch? I mean, they had those on display at both San Diego and even Toy Fair, but I don't think they had anything different at Toy Fair than they had at San Diego. And I know they're doing like their own store, like I think they're calling it the Vault. So I think it's like their own version of Hasbro Pulse that they're trying to get launched. So I have a feeling that they're going to be trying to push a lot of that collector-oriented 6-inch stuff through that. But I haven't really heard anything specific beyond what we saw, several months ago. Now, speaking of Toy Fair, and the title of tonight's live stream is a little, I don't want to say clickbaitish, because I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this summer I was very distracted and I wasn't paying attention too much as far as what's going on in the toy world, and especially like on YouTube and things like that, because I was concentrating on my dad and stuff. But ever since I've been back, I've been seeing a lot of like crazy shit, especially here on YouTube, with like the toy collecting community. But I'm not really here to focus too much on that. But I feel like there are definitely people that need to chill the fuck out. They're just like taking things to this whole new level that I think is basically, at the end of the day, is just making the hobby in general less fun. But that's just my opinion on that. But a lot of crazy stuff. But one thing that I was listening to during Toy Fair, and I wanted to kind of talk about this because to me it's just so crazy. It was an interview with Todd McFarlane by Pixel Dan, and at one point it basically was a walkthrough of the McFarlane showroom, and at one point Todd turns to the digital stuff that he's been pushing. And I've mentioned this before, that I think NFTs are a ripoff. Anyone who's spending money to buy a picture, I think, is crazy. Yada yada yada. And and I don't think I'm the only one that feels that way. In fact, I've seen a couple of recent articles saying like the NFT bubble has already burst before it even really got going. But I was listening to this interview with Pixel Dan where Todd started talking about the digital stuff, and it's pretty clear to me, Todd, I don't know who Todd was talking to, who convinced him that NFTs were going to be this big thing, but it seems pretty clear to me that Todd has invested a fair amount of time and energy trying to launch his own NFT stuff, especially with the action figures, and I mean, other companies seem to have tried to dabble in it a little bit, but like they quickly backed off. Like Hasbro had their NFT thing with Power Rangers, but I haven't heard anything more on that. Funko is probably the company that I've seen push NFTs the most, which Funko collectors to me are crazy in general. But I was listening to this interview, and the stuff that Todd was saying, it was like, I mean, I couldn't believe it. So I wanted to share this portion of the interview if you haven't seen it. Again, this is from Pixel Dan. And so let's switch over here. So the part about the digital starts at about the time mark 2022, if you're wondering. And I'm going to play it. It's playing through the microphone, so you may need to turn your volume up to hear it. But here it goes. So this is where he starts off with it.
Two products with their PC Multiverse line.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So this, so the Batmobile's out, right? I mean, and again, it's fun that you can actually buy Batman and shove him in there, and he actually fits and whatever. So this is the physical part of it, and then what we're doing is we're starting to open up like the NFT part, digital art, right? Okay. Whatever you want to call it. And you can acquire the Batmobile and then place it in your own museum. And you can collect all these figures and place them in one spot, right? So some of them will be that you can just buy the digital on its own. And then some are that you get the figure. Again, this is unpaid, but you get the figure and you get a code that gets you the digital art, the NFT with it, right? Okay. And so again, here's like the clown. This is the toy. This is what the NFT looks like. Again, cool, sort of gnarly. Some of the NFTs are animated, so there's a little bit of fun. These are all, and again, these are 3D. To be very clear. So when you put them in your room, your museum, you can walk around your museum.
Yeah, okay.
And so the Batmobile here, you literally could walk in and walk around this entire thing.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
depending on your perspective, it actually looks like it's 20 feet long, right? So
Okay, so this part. I mean, this part isn't the crazy part because this is just him giving a sales pitch on these, which, okay. I mean, I'm not sure who's really buying these, but okay. I don't really get the whole 3D thing. It's a picture. I mean, if the picture is 3D, but it's on your screen, right? Like, I don't know how you walk into your collector room. It's not like it's a hologram that pops up on a table that you can walk around, I mean, that's how he's making it sound like, but it's still on your screen, whether it's 3D on your screen or just a regular picture, it's still on your screen. So if you walk behind your screen, you're not going to see it. So, like I said, that seems like a little misleading unless I'm misunderstanding what this is. I mean, maybe he's doing holograms or something, but to me, it's a picture and it's not like truly like a 3D object in your collector room, like he's trying to make it sound. But nevertheless, this is really just, Todd doing a sales pitch. Todd is a great salesman. I think that's a large part of his success. I mean, he's a talented artist, obviously, but I think the reason why he's been so successful with like McFarlane Toys is because he is a very good salesman, per se. So, this is a sales pitch. I think, this isn't really going over well with people because we all see its pictures, but nevertheless, this is a sales pitch. So this isn't where it gets too crazy, but let's keep listening.
I know, and again, this is versions of some of the NFTs. We're just showing like, here's the original toy, but then, we get to juice up a little bit.
Oh yeah, with the lights and everything.
Yeah, and get to have a little bit of fun and animate it. You get to do things in it that you couldn't do obviously with plastic, right?
Right.
And again, it's interesting. Look at everything we put out. I consider what we do is like plastic buffet. You put it out and you let people pick and choose what they want.
There you go.
Everybody's not sort of. It's interesting. People have like this weird. I either like it or I don't like it. Digital art. Here's what people don't quite understand. The world is more than North America.
Sure.
It's a big place. And there are a lot of places where to buy a $20 toy and ship it, the shipping is like $100 or $120.
Yeah.
To ship a $20 toy. That's $140.
Right.
So what ends up happening, it becomes cost prohibitive.
Right.
And people say, no, I'm not going to buy it. So either they just don't ever get to buy it, or you have to come up with an alternate way to get it to them.
Yeah.
And so I understand that there are people who just go, no, I just want the physical stuff. I get it. I'm with you, right?
Yeah.
But there are people who live in this world where their only choice is to collect digital or nothing.
Sure.
And I'd rather have them there. The converse of that is that there's other countries that have all the physical stuff, and you can get it readily.
Right.
But let's use Tokyo.
Okay.
Lots of people live in apartments that are literally 400 square feet.
So you don't have the space for the
You
physical
have no
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
Like if you bought 4 of these toys, that's like a 30-year place, right?
Yeah.
So you have to give them another option of how can you collect a bunch of stuff and not clutter your 400 square foot house.
Okay, this is where things start to get like. So Todd's basically saying, you've got if you can't afford a nice place to display your collection, then I'm going to sell you these pictures. And this is the problem with this argument, okay? Assuming there are actual people out there who want to collect pictures of toys and not the actual toy itself, or for whatever reason, as Todd points out, these people that live in these little teeny tiny apartments that don't have any room to display it or whatever. The problem is there's this wonderful invention called Google, and you can go to Google and do a search for almost any action figure and find tons and tons of pictures of practically, I think probably every single action figure that's ever been made out there. You could probably find pictures of it. And then all you got to do is just right click with your mouse and save it to your computer or your phone or wherever you want to look at these things or collect these things at. And there you go. And you don't have to pay a cent. So this idea that somebody's going to pay money for a picture that they can basically get for free, that's the whole problem with NFTs. It's not just that it's not physical, it's that pictures are too readily available online for free that anybody can get. So why the hell would you pay Todd money for a picture of his Batmobile when you could just go online and get it for free? Now, this is one thing where I want to talk about, because going back to all the crap that's been going on with YouTube and stuff and YouTubers and stuff. So first of all, when it comes to Dan, I give Dan a lot of credit, because Dan is, traveling to New York City, paying out of his own pocket. Toy companies aren't paying to bring him up to New York City to do these interviews and stuff. He's paying out of his own pocket. He traveled, I think he lives in Chicago, so he's traveling from like Chicago to New York, and he travels to a lot of these shows, San Diego, out to California, PowerCon, so, and he's been doing it for years and years and years. So a lot of credit to Dan for, going out there and trying to do these interviews. So, but, when we start talking about shills and all that bullshit, I can understand it to a certain point of view when you're sitting here listening to an interview like that, and Dan is just sitting there shaking his head, smiling and agreeing with Todd, because you're like, why aren't you pushing back and asking, like, why would somebody pay for something that they can get for free or something like that? But the reason why Dan isn't doing that is because if Dan were to ask questions that ended up making Todd look stupid, and I'm going to be honest here, Todd's kind of doing that himself here, but if Dan were to push back and make Todd feel like, an idiot or whatever, you know what would happen? Dan would never get an interview with Todd McFarlane again. Because McFarlane doesn't, it's not like Todd McFarlane's been sitting around waiting for Dan to come interview him. It's not like, Dan's interview is no more important to him than some guy that got into Toy Fair with, 5 subscribers and also got an interview with him. Todd knows that there's like a million guys out there that are running up to these events and would be perfectly willing to interview him. So if Dan does anything, asks any kind of hard questions or pushes back on things that he says, that's it. Dan would probably never get an interview again. And Todd's not the only one. That's how everyone in this industry basically works. Whether it's Hasbro, whether it's Mattel, whether it's any of these companies, if you make them look bad, and I'm not talking, there are people that are like trying to be like gotcha, or like deliberately trying to make a company look bad, or they're being spiteful. I'm not talking about those, but Dan is presenting himself here as a journalist. Okay, he's doing an interview with this guy who's trying to sell you products. And so I definitely can understand if you're watching Dan and you're like, why aren't you pushing back and asking harder questions? That can be very frustrating, and it's easy to assume, well, he's not doing it, or he's not asking hard questions because he wants to get free toys. Well, that's not really the case. Again, Dan spent a lot of money to come up to New York City, just like he spent a lot of money to go out to San Diego Comic-Con and so on and so forth to do these interviews. Yeah, is he getting some benefit? Is he getting views on his YouTube channel? Is he making a little bit of money off of YouTube? Sure. But Dan has a family, he has kids, he's got a full-time job. Dan has taken his time to come in and do this. So, you can't blame him for not wanting to burn bridges and not be able to do these interviews. But, and it can be very frustrating. There's a reason why I don't do interviews like this anymore, because I got to the point where it was like, there's no point. I don't feel like sitting there just smiling and shaking my head going, yeah, Todd, sure, right. But at the same time, if I asked hard questions, and like the last interview I ever got with Todd, I asked some hard questions. I thought they were fair questions back when he first got the DC Multiverse license. And I thought my interview with him was very good and it was well received. But guess what? I've never been asked to do an interview with Todd ever since, and he doesn't care, if I interview him or not. It just, the guys doing this stuff do not have any real leverage with any of these toy companies, because at the end of the day, they don't really give a crap about any of us beyond whatever positive press or whatever that we might give them. So you have to walk a fine line if you want to try and do this kind of thing. And it's not because you're a shill. Like I said, any benefit you're getting, like an occasional free toy or something, is nowhere. I guarantee you, Dan spent a lot more money to come up here and interview Todd than any few free figures that he might have gotten at some point from McFarlane Toys. So that's where, from the viewer standpoint, and you don't see them asking the hard questions, I totally get the frustration of people, but at the same time, you don't really understand that because nobody is that influential in this hobby, nobody has that much leverage. It's not like 60 Minutes. It's not like, oh, I've got to go on 60 Minutes and do an interview. I know they're going to ask me hard questions that I'm not going to like, but I need to go on there and do that interview. And so, but it doesn't work that way in the toy world, because these guys just don't put enough, these companies just don't put that much value in what any of us do as an individual. As a whole, they look at us as a tool that they can use, everybody on social media and all that. But as an individual, none of us really have that much influence. Not enough where if we ask something that they don't like or makes them look bad, you basically would likely find that you've lost your access. All right, so let's get back to Todd and this crazy intro about the digital stuff.
Sure.
And the answer is you got to go digital, right?
Yeah.
And so it's weird because people, like, I have this weird conversation, usually with older people, that they're like,
Well, it's hard to understand, right? Especially, like, we've been collecting this physical stuff for so long. So sometimes you're like, I don't understand what you mean by...
I like this. It's just us old fogies that don't understand, why we shouldn't want to pay money for a picture that we could essentially get free. It's because I'm old and I don't understand.
Collecting a digital picture, like, what does that
yeah,
mean?
but they're
Right?
going, there's no value. I don't even know why they want.
What I hear is young people aren't as smart, and so we can probably convince them more easily that they should buy this picture because one day it might be valuable.
On it and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
and I
sure,
go,
sure.
dude, like, I don't care, especially old people. I go, you're already doing it.
Yeah.
So this thing that you go, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't know why people do it. You're doing it. It's on your phone.
Yeah.
Go to your gallery.
Yeah.
Every one of those photos
Yeah.
is digital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Right,
is there
right.
any value?
Yes, Todd, every picture on my phone is digital, but you know what? I didn't pay money for any of those pictures on my phone. I either took a picture of it with my own camera, or again, I went to the internet and I grabbed it off the internet for free.
In that picture of your grandchild? To you, there is.
Of course, yeah.
So what they're doing is they're buying something, but instead of being your grandchild, it's something from a movie or a band or a TV show or a video game that they like.
Sure.
So why can you have your digital fondness that puts a smile on your face?
Okay, Todd could never run for president because Todd loves to touch people. I don't mean in an inappropriate way, but I've done interviews with Todd. I've been the cameraman for other people who've done interviews with Todd. Todd likes to be close to you and stuff. So like if Todd ever ran for president, like he would be of course he's from Canada, so I guess he couldn't actually run for president anyway. But anyway.
But somehow they're aliens by doing the exact same thing.
See,
right?
like, I didn't know we were gonna walk in here today and get like a lesson on NFTs with Todd McFarlane.
No.
Now there's Dan. He's thinking in his head, Todd, no one's buying this stuff. So he's like trying to kind of make a joke out of it, but And obviously Todd, I mean Dan obviously is not pushing hard back on this digital stuff in any way or form, but you can tell Todd's like getting all defensive, and I think that's because Todd's been taking a lot of crap online. Like if you go to the McFarlane Facebook page, anytime that they try and promote this digital stuff, you know, if you go and read the comments, it's pretty hilarious. So I think definitely Todd has gotten frustrated that people aren't buying into the whole digital thing.
No, it's amazing. No, I love the way you're explaining, like offering different things for different people, and everybody
Right.
collects
And so,
differently.
right. My answer has always been,
Yeah.
if it's not for you, don't buy it. But
Yes.
For some
No,
people,
that is absolutely
For some
right.
people, that's their thing.
Sure.
So, and maybe because I'm an artist, right? And with the thing that always got the hair up on the back of my neck was censorship.
Sure,
Like,
yes.
if you don't like,
Now, I'm sorry, but this is complete bullshit. Basically, Todd's sitting here saying, if you don't like it, don't buy it, but you don't need to mention that you don't like it. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people out there that are completely rude. They say totally inappropriate things. They take things way too far. But if we're just talking about somebody who says, yeah, I don't really get this. I think it's pretty stupid. I don't know why anyone would want to pay money for a picture. If you're considering that trying to censor people, that's just crazy to me. Censorship is if you get asked a hard question and you cut them off and you won't do interviews with them anymore, that's more censorship than somebody expressing their opinion that they don't think this is a good thing, or they don't think this is something they like, or they don't understand why you keep trying to push it. So again, not talking about extreme nut jobs that start like cussing people out and getting truly like angry. I mean, if you're getting angry that Todd's trying to push this stuff, you've gone too far. You know, you can sit there, we can sit there and laugh about it. We can sit there and say, this is kind of ridiculous. You know, but if you're like truly getting online and you're getting angry about this, then that you need to pull back and you need to, you know, kind of like step away or what have you. But still, trying to say censorship because somebody expressed a dislike for something is also just completely crazy and ridiculous to me.
my art, I can live with that. But if you tell me my art shouldn't exist, that's censorship. Just don't buy it.
Just yeah, if you don't like
Right?
it, move on. Right?
If you don't like broccoli, just don't buy it and
Just
take it
don't
away.
eat it.
And guess what? They don't.
Yeah.
But what they don't do is they don't go on the internet
And yell about broccoli.
and they don't get the manager and go, how
Yeah, okay. And again, I gotta give Dan some credit for being able to sit there with a straight face and be like, Todd, you're just totally full of shit.
how dare you have it? You just walk on by. And I've said for decades, if you don't like what we have, walk on by. Just
There you
do what
go.
you do with everything else in life. Let others choose whether they like that flavor of ice cream that you might not, right?
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't have to be the same. That's a great thing about life.
I like
So,
it. I like it.
Over here, continuing.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, just crazy things that you hear people at these toy companies say. To me, it's just crazy. I know Todd probably had invested a fair amount into this whole digital stuff. Like I say, I don't know if there was just like nobody around that was like, Todd, this is going to be a bad idea, you know, or maybe there were people that were like, Todd, let's not really, this is probably not the best idea. And maybe Todd just ignored it. I mean, Todd's his own boss. He does what he wants. So I don't know, but somebody obviously convinced him NFTs was going to be this huge thing. You know, he's built up these websites that cater to it and stuff. So he's definitely put a fair amount into it. But to me, just how defensive you see him get in this interview, obviously, and then, like I say, if you go to Facebook or, you know, social media and whenever they try and post about this stuff, you read the comments, you can see people just aren't really buying into it. And I think, like I say, NFTs in general, I think are, you know, pretty much done. But Todd's still, you know, sitting there pushing it, trying to sell it. But I definitely feel like, you know, he took it too far, you know, talking about people having too small of apartments. I mean, let's be honest, if you have too small of an apartment to be able to, display action figures, then maybe you shouldn't be buying action figures. Maybe you should just be saving your money up and trying to get a bigger house at some point later in your life or what have you. I mean, that's okay. But like expecting, well, you don't have the room to display physical items, but here's some pictures that I'll sell to you. I don't know. It's just complete crazy off the wall. I'm sitting there, I sat there and watched that and I'm like, holy hell, how did he say that with a straight face? And believe me, if Todd watches this video, he probably won't, but if he ever does, I mean, not that I've been given any access to Todd in several years, but I definitely would be cut off. Like says, hey man, if you don't like street humans, then broccoli. See, that's the thing, and I mean, this isn't just with action figures. This is with everything in the world today. You have what I would call the extremists, the people that just take things too far. They're making death threats or like let's talk about Randy Falk and NECA Toys. So I understand the frustration that people had over the Loot Crate stuff with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But as I understand it, some idiots basically doxed Randy, threw his personal information out there on the internet because they were mad. And now Randy, well, he's a spokesman for NECA and, but that wasn't Randy. The whole Loot Crate thing wasn't Randy. It's not like he had much control over any of that. So even if he did, taking things to that extreme is crazy. So there are those people out there, or people that make video after video trying to hate on everything for attention or whatever. And then there's just people who want to legitimately criticize or say, hey, this really doesn't seem like a good idea. And then there are the people on the other side that feel like everything has to be great. Like you can't say anything negative. Like you can't talk bad about McFarlane because McFarlane's great and this person loves everything Todd does, and this person has put Todd up on a pedestal and he's like his hero, and like if I say anything bad, then like I'm attacking him or something. And and that's also ridiculous. We should be able to criticize things or in a respectful way. We should be able to, voice our opinions, again, in a respectful way. And I'm going to stick with action figures because I don't, but I mean, again, this goes in all things in the world. And I'm not attacking Todd because I am pointing out that this whole thing with the digital is ridiculous. But again, I give Todd a lot of credit for things that he's done in the toy world. He's done a lot of good things for action figures and collectors. He was one of the first people to actually start dedicating action figures to the adult collector before any other company even imagined doing that. I think Todd has done some good things with DC and Spawn and other things, and he's one of my favorite comic book artists. So I'm not attacking Todd. I'm not saying Todd's a bad person. I think he took the sales pitch of the digital stuff a bit too far, but that's not an attack on Todd or the company, or I don't wish bad things for Todd. If there are truly people out there who want to pay money for digital pictures, I say more power to you. If you've got the money to spend, and that's what you want to do, I don't understand it. Todd's 100% right, and maybe it's my age, but I totally don't understand it. But if that's what you want to spend your money on, I've got no problem with that because it's your money and you can do with it as you want. Again, I don't understand it, and I think it's a little crazy. I mean, but if that's what you really want to do, then like I say, more power to you. And I'm not going to sit there and say start attacking you because you've decided to buy one of Todd's NFTs. That's again, that's crazy. That's taking two things too far. But I don't like when we wrap just normal criticism about something in with the crazies and just try and push it off. Like, I don't need to hear your criticism because you're just attacking me or you're being crazy. On the flip side, I don't like the crazies that oh, well, I'm just criticizing you even though I've taken it way too far and I'm saying things that are totally inappropriate or doing things that are totally inappropriate, but I'm just doing it because I'm criticizing you and I want to see things better. I mean, both sides, to me, it just drives me crazy. Yeah, literally, if you ever wonder, Randy did an interview with Dan at Toy Fair, but that's the first interview that I think Dan has done in a couple of years now. And from what I understand, I haven't personally talked to Randy about it, but from everything I understand, it's because he basically pulled back on social media and everything because of what happened. And again, I understand people's frustrations with NECA over the Loot Crate stuff, and I'm sure Randy probably was as frustrated as anybody about it. But whoever did the doxing to him, that was just completely inappropriate. It did not accomplish anything positive. It didn't. I mean, eventually Loot Crate finally got those figures out to people, or most people, but that was going to happen anyway. The doxing had nothing to do with it. All you did was a guy who, and again, Randy's not perfect. Randy does tend to have a thin skin, doesn't take criticism well, but the guy would go out on Twitter on a almost daily basis to try and address people's questions, provide them information about the products. And so all these people did was basically just, so now we get much less information about NECA products than we used to. You probably may have noticed in the last year or so, there's been very little communication from NECA on social media and stuff. And that's because Randy basically, from what I understand, was yeah, I'm done with this because I'm not going to have my family put in danger, or things like that because of these crazy people. So that's just way too far. Shartimus Prime has joined us. Randy was in a safe space with Dan. Shartimus is here. If you guys don't know, he's got a Kickstarter that's launched. I talked about it in my news video the other day and posted about it on TNI, but he's got a Kickstarter with his new figures line that he's been trying to do. So and Shartimus will be at New York Comic Con as well. Sorry, I had a brain fart from it. But Street Humans is Shartimus's action figure line. And again, he's got a Kickstarter on it. So just Google Street Humans if you want to get more details on it, and his site and the Kickstarter should come up at the top. Sorry, as I've been rambling, I have not been looking at your guys' comments, so I'm not dunking on people in tiny homes. I believe Todd was saying that if you have a tiny home, you've got to buy pictures of action figures and not toys. My advice is if you're financially strapped for whatever reason, then I probably wouldn't buy physical or paper action figures. I would save my money until I'm at a point where, then maybe I could buy stuff. If you're putting yourself in debt to buy action figures, well, that's probably not the smartest thing that you could be doing. Soulcraft. So again, we talked about this a little bit before, but as far as things new, like NECA will have a few new products at their booth. Super 7 might have a few different things, like maybe some different prototypes or something like that. They're going to be announcing their Cobra mothership, but I'm not expecting like tons and tons of new reveals at New York Comic Con this year. It's probably going to be a lot of what we've already seen. Hasbro will have their Giant Man figure on display so people can see it in hand, trying to generate some excitement on that. I've talked pretty much in detail about the Giant Man, so I feel like there's not really much more to say on that. I still have my doubts that it's going to reach its funding goal. Not saying it's impossible, and for those of you that want this figure, I hope it does reach its funding goal, but just based on the numbers, I just am not seeing the interest there. But, who knows? Maybe there'll be a huge surge at the end. 3,000 is certainly not impossible. I'm going to guess we're going to be looking at needing 3,000 more backers going into next week. And I mean, it's certainly not impossible that there's that many people out there who's just been waiting last minute. But I don't know. Hey Tetsuki, and if I mispronounce that, I do apologize. But thank you very much for being a fan and watching my stuff. Shartimus thinks it'll make it. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just feel like this is following a very well. I won't say it's following a similar pattern to last year, because last year at this stage, the backer numbers were literally going down. So we have not gotten to that point. So as long as the counter continues to move up, I think there's at least a chance that it will back. If we started to see that, people backing out, like deciding that they changed their mind and they don't want it, we started seeing the numbers go down in any way, then I'd say stick a fork in it. But there's definitely still a chance it could back. But I am still, again, I won't say it's impossible, but I certainly don't think it's anywhere near guaranteed that it's going to back. That's pretty much where I come down at. Apparently everybody's texting me during my live stream, so sorry. Blake says, I think Marvel's too proud to add something extra to. I wouldn't say I wouldn't use the word proud. Here's the thing, and I've said this before, and some people tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm standing by this. If you're like, I like the price, the $200 price, but I wanted more with the stretch goals. The problem with that is the stretch goals and the price are tied together. I know maybe it's not supposed to be that way, but my feeling is they are. That when Hasbro comes up with the stretch goals, they factored in the price of making the whatever those stretch goals are into the price that you're paying for the base figure. with the idea that you're going to unlock everything and so that you will get everything. So like with Galactus, that had 3 figures. Now the Silver Surfer was essentially a reissue, but that still cost some money to get put in there. But then you had the Morgue figure, which was a completely new figure, and the Nova figure, which was a new figure, and then of course the Doom head. But that was, I could have done with that Doom head. But the cost to do those figures was put into that $400 price tag. That's why Galactus was $400. One of the main reasons why Galactus was $400 and Giant Man's only $200, because with Giant Man, the only thing they're throwing in are 2 faceplates. The cost to do those faceplates is much less than to do, action figures. So if you wanted cooler stretch goals, then you have to be willing to pay more. If you want the lower price, if that's what's more important to you, then you're going to have to settle for getting less. That's just, in my view, that's how it goes. So Hasbro last year gave us a bunch of cool figures with the Engine of Vengeance, hoping that it would back, and it didn't. Everyone complained about the price and all that. So Hasbro this year, I think, took a different approach and said, okay, let's bring the price down. And they ended up to do that. One of the big things that they did to do that is they did not give us very exciting stretch goals. Now, I think if you've got an item, if the base item is like something that is super popular and that like everybody wants, the Sentinel was super popular. X-Men are super popular in the world of Marvel. The Sentinel was an army builder. So a true army builder. So people were buying 2, 3, 4, I forget what the maximum you could buy, but there were people buying the maximum number so that they could build an army of Sentinels. Sorry. Apparently I'm popular tonight. Anyway, so, you could build an army. People were wanting to build an army of Sentinels. That thing backed, we didn't even know what the stretch goals were. And that thing backed in just over 24 hours because the base item was just so popular and so many people wanted it. So even if the stretch goals had been totally crappy, and I think the stretch goals were decent with the Sentinel, not as good as I think the stretch goals with Galactus were better, but they were decent with the Sentinel. But regardless of that, people backed it because they just wanted that base item. There was just enough wide appeal with that. Galactus took longer because it was not a army builder. I mean, I'm sure there were some people who bought more than one, some that probably were going to resell it. I mean, a lot of people buy multiples to resell because they know the value tends to go up on these things, not down. Some people just buy multiples of things, but for the most part, not nearly as many people were buying multiples of Galactus as they were with the Sentinel. But Galactus is still a very cool character, and he's one of the baddest bad guys in the Marvel Universe. And so he still had wide enough appeal. And then the stretch goals really helped put Galactus over the top because, those were some really nice figures that we got with the Galactus. So that's why you saw such a huge surge at the end of that campaign. The problem with Giant Man is Giant Man in its own right. The figure itself seems pretty nice to me. If you're a fan of Giant Man, this seems like a really, really good figure. And I know I said we've talked about Giant Man. I didn't really have anything more to say, but obviously I lied because I'm now rambling about Giant Man. But anyway, the figure itself seems to be very nice. The Giant Man figure seems to be very nice. So if you're a big Giant Man fan, no pun intended, this is something you probably definitely want to add to your collection. I personally, and I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for the entire fandom, but for me personally, I'm just not that big enough of a Giant Man fan. And Hank Pym, with all of his different identities, we've had so many different Hank Pym figures over the years that I just don't feel like I need another one. I actually, I don't display multiple Hank Pyms on my shelf, so I picked the one that I like the best. And I actually, as far as Hank Pym goes, I prefer Ant-Man over Giant Man, so I display my Ant-Man figure. I take that back. I do actually, because I do have a shelf with just the West Coast Avengers, and so I have the, the recent jumpsuit Hank Pym with my West Coast Avenger team. But in general, I'm not displaying like 10 different Hank Pym figures on my shelf. I pick the one I like the best. I pick the version of Hank Pym I like the best, and that's the one I put on the shelf. And I tend to prefer Ant-Man over Giant Man, or Yellow Jacket for that matter. And so I have Ant-Man on my shelf. But if I wanted Giant Man, I've already got two different Giant Man figures. I've got the original Toy Biz Build-A-Figure, and then I have the more modern Giant Man that Hasbro did. And yes, it's not as tall as the HasLab, but it's tall enough for me, because if I was going to put the HasLab Giant Man in my shelf with my other Avengers, I'd have to remove other shelves. And that means I'd have less space to display other figures. Or I'd have to put them up on a shelf like you see the Galactus behind me there. But then, you can see those shelves behind me are pretty full, right? So if I was going to try and find a place for Giant Man back there, then the stuff that's already back there, I'd have to either put away in a bin, or I'd have to try and find somewhere else. But I'm just, you can see my space is pretty limited. I don't display toys throughout my entire house. I display toys down here in my office basement, and I display action figures in my office up on the third floor. But I don't use my entire house to display action figures. I love action figures, but my wife would kill me if I started putting action figures all throughout the house. So I'm limited on the amount of space that I have, and I have pretty good space, but I also have a lot of action figures. So it just gets to the point where Giant Man's just not appealing enough, and I've already got enough versions of Giant Man that I just don't feel like I need to spend $200 on another one. That doesn't mean the figure's not nice. It just means I don't really feel like I need another Giant Man. And while I can't really definitively speak for everyone in the hobby, I do feel like, based on what I've been seeing and reading and everything, that I'm not the only one that feels that way. And therefore, like last year, again, I've said this before, I don't think the Engines of Vengeance failed last year because some YouTubers got on YouTube and started hating on it. I really think those people had very minimal impact on that campaign. And I said from day one, when that campaign launched, it was going to have a hard time funding because it just wasn't based on something that had wide enough appeal. Giant Man probably has a little more appeal than the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider in his car, because there's a lot of classic Avenger fans out there. But I don't think classic Avenger fans are nearly in the numbers of, say, like X-Men fans. There's a lot more X-Men fans out there. There's a lot more Spider-Man fans out there than there are of classic Avenger fans. So I just think that something like Giant Man, again, just didn't have enough appeal, which is why I feel like it is going to have a hard time getting funded. And again, that's not to say I don't want it to fund, because even though I personally don't want, I have no, if it funded, again, I'm not interested in it, but it wouldn't anger me if it funded. It's not like I want Hasbro to fail. I don't want them to succeed with this HasLab. But nowhere is that ever entered my mind. I'd be more than happy for those of you that want this figure if it funds, so that you can add it to your collection. But I'm simply just looking at the numbers and what I'm seeing online, and I honestly, I think Marvel Legends as a whole has had a decline in the last couple of years. And I think there's a number of reasons. It's not just because Hasbro sucks or their quality has gone way down. I've not seen, there's some quality issues with some of their figures, but I've not seen the quality of the figures drop that drastically. But one thing I have seen that I think is a big factor with Marvel Legends is I've seen the interest in MCU movies ever since Avengers Endgame decline. And whether, I know the comic book fans can be very vocal, but I can tell you, based on statistics that I see from my own websites, that the MCU stuff dating up to Avengers Endgame was far more popular with people than the comic book based stuff. But as we're now a couple years off, since Avengers Endgame came out, and I think interest in the MCU has declined, and therefore people are becoming less interested in the Marvel figures, and specifically the movie figures. Hasbro has to still keep cranking out movie figures for every movie and TV show that Disney puts out, because that's part of their contract. Disney requires them to put out all that movie product because they wanted to use it as promotional tools for their entertainment properties. So the more movies, the more TV shows that Disney puts out for Marvel, that means the more action figure stuff that Hasbro has to put out. And there's also this thing where Disney has a lot of control over what Hasbro does. It's not like Hasbro can just say, I want to put this out today and I want to put that out. They have to get permission for pretty much every figure that they put out. And, I think Disney plays a large part in the character selection that we are seeing. And I'm not sure that that's been helpful in recent years. I think there's been some bad choices. But I put that more on Disney than I do Hasbro themselves. Same thing with Star Wars. And one of the reasons why I feel like Disney is playing a larger role in this than Hasbro themselves is because I see a lot of the same things happening with the Star Wars stuff as I have been with the Marvel stuff, where just like the character selection is getting ridiculous, and like they keep releasing the same things over and over again with different variations or whatever. And it's like, enough, I don't need another Wolverine. I mean, for those of you who like the X-Men 97 stuff, that's great. But I looked at those and I'm like, I have all of those characters. In fact, I have multiples of all those characters. I don't need them. I don't need any more of them. Even if they're a little bit better than the previous versions that we've gotten, I just don't need them anymore. And I find myself saying that with a lot of the stuff that Hasbro's been putting out, again, especially with Marvel and especially with Star Wars. It's like, I don't need another Grogu and Mando figure. I don't need another Jedi Luke. I don't need another clone trooper. So my interest in Star Wars, even though I liked for the most part like things like the Ahsoka series, in fact, as far as Disney Plus shows, I think the Star Wars stuff has been a lot better than the Marvel stuff, but it still has not been enough to get me really buying a lot of Star Wars figures these days. So I don't know. All right. Well, I've gotten way off topic here, so sorry for the rambling. I would agree with you. GI Joe Classified, and I've said this before, is my favorite action figure line right now. Again, not perfect. Like, I got the new Firefly, Firefly version 2, which looks much better than the Target one, but like his ab crunch is like really loose. And, not all the figures are perfect, but I still, for the most part, have really been enjoying the GI Joe Classified stuff. Now, even with GI Joe, like, I'm waiting, like, I want Hasbro to complete the core team. Like I have one shelf with like what I consider the original GI Joe team members. So like I'm waiting for Zap, and I'm waiting for Flash, and I'm waiting for Steeler, Short Fuse, Doc. Now I know some of these have been announced as coming, but like I want to finish those out, and then also like the set, what I call, and again, a lot of my influence of love of GI Joe comes from the cartoon. I mean, I used to read all the Marvel comics as well, but GI Joe to me was always the cartoon more so than anything else. So that's what I view like the second season of characters, so like Flint, Lady J, like we need Blowtorch, we need Alpine, season 3 for Alpine, I guess you would consider, but we need Alpine. We've got Bazooka already. We're getting Quick Kick. We need Alpine to go with those 3. So like when Hasbro starts doing more of these like Agent Helix, or even like the Shadow Tracker, I think the Shadow Tracker is kind of cool looking, but when they start doing those characters, I become a little less interested, just because I mean, I have some of the comics with Agent Helix, but still, she was never like a favorite character of mine. There's so many other characters I'd rather be seeing Hasbro do than some of these newer characters. But I do understand the logic of wanting to try and spread it out a little bit. I think like going back to Marvel Legends and Hasbro, the Marvel Legends team has spread out some of these teams way too much. The fact that we have not yet been able to complete our new Warriors, the fact that we are now getting a modern version of Justice and Namorita as opposed to the classic versions to go with all the other new Warrior figures that they did, irks the crap out of me. Because if Hasbro pulls one of these box set deals like they've been doing, where like they're going to make me buy 3 figures that I already got in order to get the classic versions of those characters, I'm going to be pretty pissed off. You know, there's no reason why they couldn't have given us those classic versions. They've been dragging out the new Warriors team for a long time now. Same thing with X-Force. It's been for why we haven't gotten a Wolfsbane figure or a Feral figure to finish out our X-Force and our X-Factor teams it's like crazy to me. I understand spreading it out, like not doing all of them at one time. I get that, but we're like going on years now that these teams have been incomplete, and like seeing them start other teams and stuff before they finish these core teams, it's like, to me, that irritates me, and that makes me lose interest even more in the line when I see them do that. So I'm glad we finally got like classic Mockingbird, and even Hank Pym, and I will admit that the other figures in that West Coast Avengers box set were nicer than the first ones that they did. But that's another tactic that gets a little annoying. It's like, oh, let me do a crappy version first, and then I'm going to give you the better version. Like I still cannot believe anybody bought that Spider-Man movie 3-pack, because, you know, word leaked out pretty early on, like even before that 3-pack went up for pre-order, that we were going to be getting a wave of figures with those Spider-Man characters in it, you know, before Hasbro even opened up the pre-orders for that 3-pack. So I was really surprised that people were pre-ordering that 3-pack when it was pretty obvious that we were going to get better versions, probably, you know, almost definitely without the masks and stuff. But you know, those are tactics that, you know, have been used for a very long time in the toy world, but especially as prices go up and stuff, they just become more and more frustrating. But anyway, sorry. So GI Joe, yes, I GI Joe is a line, probably the only line where I'm buying almost every figure for today. Most of the other lines I've become very you know, pick and choose here and there, but GI Joe right now, Masterverse I guess is the other line that I've been collecting pretty consistently. Though I will say some of the stuff that they're starting to come out with for like like I don't need another Trapjaw figure for Masterverse. I like the Trapjaw that I already have, so I don't feel like I need another one, or Triclops, or, you know, they're kind of like going back and like reissuing characters that we just got not too long ago, and I don't see enough of an improvement. Or in some case, like I really think the Trapjaw that they did previously looks better than the new one that they just announced. So but up until at least most recently, I've been buying most of the Masterverse stuff. But GI Joe Classified is by far right now my favorite action figure line. And again, it has nothing to do with it being a military line, like all this bullshit that I've been seeing recently about like GI Joe versus Valorverse. Valorverse, I'm sure, has some pretty cool figures to it, but to me, Valorverse Action Force is just a generic military line. Which, if that's your thing, I mean, I'm totally cool with that. But to me, that's not why I collect GI Joe. I collect GI Joe because of the characters that I grew up with, you know, watching on TV as a kid. That's why I collect GI Joe. So, like, you know, Hasbro at PulseCon announced those essentially generic army figures, right? Which I'm sure they're trying to compete with Action Force and Valor, you know, all that jazz. But like, those figures really have no interest to me. They're not, it's not that they're bad looking and they have a lot of accessories and stuff, but they're not characters I'm interested in. Again, that's me personally. I understand that not everybody collects for the same reasons I do. So, and there are, I'm sure, plenty of people out there who are just interested in collecting, you know, military oriented figures with a lot of cool weapons and stuff. So, but for me personally, you know, if like we were comparing GI Joe to Action Force or any other military line, GI Joe is always going to win the day because it's not about the military line. It's the characters that made GI Joe, and in the cartoon and in the comics and stuff. And those are the figures that I want. And all nostalgia. It is 100% all nostalgia based for me. Always has been, and probably always will be. It's why I don't really collect a lot of independent action figure lines in general. It's why I've never had any interest whatsoever to go out and try and make my own action figures. I'm not a designer. I'm not a sculptor. And it's just not something that I've ever been interested in. To me, it's all about the nostalgia. It's all about the stuff I grew up on. It's all about, Star Wars, Transformers, GI Joe. And, I'm not a huge fan of, it's not like I'm like Hasbro fanboy, but the reality is Hasbro owns the IPs or the licenses for pretty much all of those nostalgic brands. And so that's why like 90% of the stuff I collect is probably Hasbro based. It's not because I'm like, I want to support Hasbro and make sure their executives get all bonuses and stuff. It's just that they happen to be the ones that put that stuff out. But to Hasbro's credit, this hobby probably would not even be around today if it wasn't for Hasbro. I know some of that might offend some of you to say that, but Hasbro, while they have done plenty of crap things and things that probably have hurt the hobby, they've also done many positive things for this hobby, and they put out a lot of product that I think a lot of collectors that have brought people into this hobby. And so if it wasn't for Hasbro, I don't think this hobby, there wouldn't be these independent action figure lines. Like, again, no slant on something like Action Force, but I don't think there would be an Action Force line if it wasn't for GI Joe. I don't think, these companies trying to, relaunch these very obscure 80s properties would even be able to do that. Biker Mice from Mars or whatever, if it wasn't for the people that companies like Hasbro have brought into this hobby. So, Hasbro's by far not perfect. They're a corporation. They make decisions on a corporate level that often rub people wrong. I get all that, but you also cannot deny the good things that Hasbro has done for this hobby and a lot of cool stuff that Hasbro has put out over the years. All right, well, sorry I didn't get to many of your guys' questions tonight. Mostly just me rambling tonight. But again, reason why I'm on tonight, Tuesday, and not Thursday is because I am going to be up at New York Comic Con on Thursday, just for the day. So, like, probably about this time on Thursday, I'll be getting on the train to come back home. But I will have coverage up. I'll take pictures of whatever new stuff. I'll get good pictures of the giant man figure on display from Hasbro. So if you're still on the fence and you want to see it, get a better look at it, be sure to check Marvelous News on Thursday. And as always, thanks for everybody who has tuned in tonight and listened to me ramble. One final message here is, there's a lot of craziness in the world in general. There's a lot of angry people in the world in general. And it's totally cool to criticize and even poke a little fun at things like Todd's sales pitch for the digital stuff. But if you're finding yourself truly getting angry over any of this stuff, if you're getting angry because a company put something out, like truly angry, then my advice is step away from the hobby, step away from YouTube, step away from the camera if you're a YouTuber or whatever. If you're truly getting angry or along those lines, then, walk away, find something else. This hobby is supposed to be fun. It is supposed to, be an escapism to a certain extent, to get away from all the craziness in the world. And, if you're finding that you're not getting that kind of enjoyment out of these, that's probably an indication that you should start looking at something else. But just getting angry and whatever, it's not going to change anything for the better. it's likely going to make things worse. It's going to drive people away. It's going to make the hobby smaller. It's, so like I said, not saying you can't criticize. I'm not saying you can't say you don't like something, but again, I'm just speaking to those, if you truly have lost the joy of collecting this stuff for whatever reason, whether it's price, quality, whatever, then do yourself a favor and just step away and find something else that will hopefully bring you happiness. That's the best advice I can give to anybody out there, including myself. And so take it as you will. But as always, guys, I really appreciate you guys coming in tonight and listening to me. Again, Shartimus Prime, Street Humans, I've given him that plug. Shartimus is a friend of mine, so, check it out. If you don't back it, that's cool too, but check it out, see what you think. I think he's put, a lot of time into this. So, but yeah, there we go. So anyway, thank you guys. Hope you enjoy New York Comic Con coverage. If you are going to New York Comic Con and you're going to be there on Thursday, I'll probably have like a Marvelous News shirt on. So if you happen to see me, feel free to step up and say hi. It's been a while since I've been to a convention. This is my first convention I've been to since before the pandemic. So, or since the pandemic, I should say. So, feel free to say hi if you happen to see me or what have you. But always, guys, thanks for watching. And until next time, guys, I will catch you later.
Hey, thanks for watching today's video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification so you're alerted every time I upload a new video. And be sure to head over to the Toy News International and Marvelous News message boards communities. It's a great place to talk toys and win cool contests like $100 store credits to Big Bad Toy Store. And remember, action figures are great.